There's a sound that visits me every morning before the sun rises over Virginia. It's the quiet creaking of this old wooden house settling into itself, like tired bones adjusting after a long night. I sit at my kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a chipped porcelain cup, and I listen. At 102 years old, you learn to listen to small things. They carry the truth we once ran from. My name is Clara Whitfield. I live alone now. Widow. No siblings left. Most of my friends are names etched into cold stone. And when you outlive almost everyone you've ever loved, the memories grow louder than the world outside. I want to tell you something I wish someone had forced me to understand when I was young. Not whispered, not suggested, forced. There was a warning I ignored, a quiet warning. It didn't come with sirens. It didn't break down my door. It simply stood in the corner of my life and waited patiently for me to notice it. And I didn't. I was 24 when I married Thomas. He had steady hands and a steady job at the mill. In those days, steady was considered romantic. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. I thought silence meant depth. I thought seriousness meant strength. I thought providing meant loving. I was wrong. Now don't misunderstand me. Thomas was not cruel. He never raised a hand to me. He paid the bills. He fixed the roof. He showed up. But there's a difference between presence and connection, and I didn't know that back then. The warning came the first winter we were married. I remember standing by the sink, my hands submerged in soapy water, staring at the frost forming along the edges of the kitchen window. I had spent the whole day alone. No phone call, no conversation, just the tick of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. When Thomas came home, I tried to tell him about my day. Something small, how I slipped on the porch and laughed at myself, how I baked bread from scratch and burned the bottom. He nodded, he grunted, he opened the newspaper, and something inside me shrank. It wasn't anger, it wasn't heartbreak, it was something quieter, loneliness. That was the warning. You can be married and lonely. You can sleep beside someone and still feel like you're drifting alone in open water. But I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself this is what adulthood looks like. I told myself love doesn't need to be loud. Years passed. We had 2 children. I poured myself into motherhood. I volunteered at church. I baked pies for neighbors. I became the dependable one, the strong one, the woman who handled things. People admired that about me. But inside, I felt like I was living on emotional crumbs. Thomas remained steady, predictable, responsible, and distant. Sometimes I would sit at the edge of the bed at night and look at him sleeping. I would study his face and wonder, does he see me? Or does he just see a wife? That question haunted me for decades. But here's the dangerous part. You can get used to anything. You can get used to silence. You can get used to not being asked how you feel. You can get used to being the only one who initiates affection. You can get used to lowering your needs until they fit into someone else's comfort. And once you get used to it, you start calling it normal. That's how 40 years passed. 40. Do you understand how long that is? That's enough time to build a life, to raise children, to grow old beside someone. And yet, when Thomas passed at 78 from a sudden stroke, I sat in this very kitchen and realized something that shook me to my core. I didn't know him, not deeply, I knew his routines. I knew how he liked his eggs. I knew the way he cleared his throat before speaking. But I didn't know his fears. I didn't know his regrets. I didn't know what he lay awake thinking about at night. And the painful truth? He didn't know mine either. We coexisted beautifully. We survived responsibly. But we never truly met each other in the middle. That winter after his funeral was the coldest of my life, not because of the snow, but because of the silence. The house was no different than before. It had always been quiet. But now I understood that the quiet had been there long before death. I began replaying moments, the warning signs, the early evenings when I felt invisible, the times I swallowed my disappointment because at least he's a good man, the birthdays that felt procedural instead of heartfelt. And I realized something that changed me forever. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of connection. I had no dramatic fights to point to, no scandal, no betrayal, just a slow erosion of intimacy. And I allowed it, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid to ask for more, afraid to seem ungrateful, afraid to disrupt stability. So I traded depth for safety. And safety, my dear, can become a cage if you never question it. Now at 102, sitting here alone in Virginia, I have a kind of clarity that only time can give you. And I want you to hear me carefully. If you feel lonely beside someone, that feeling is not small. It is not dramatic. It is not something to suppress. It is information. It is your heart knocking. I don't regret marrying Thomas. I don't regret the life we built. But I regret never learning how to say, I need more than this. I regret waiting for him to read my mind instead of teaching him my language. I regret convincing myself that emotional hunger was immaturity. The truth is, intimacy requires courage. It requires uncomfortable conversations. It requires risking disappointment. And I chose comfort. Let me tell you something else aging teaches you. Time does not reward silence. It amplifies it. If you spend years not speaking your truth, you will one day wake up in a quiet house and realize the only voice left to hear is your own. After Thomas died, I began doing something I had never done before. I started speaking out loud, even when no one was here. I would sit at this table and say, Clara, what do you feel today? At first, it felt foolish. But slowly, I began to meet myself in a way I never had. I discovered I was angrier than I thought, sadder than I admitted, but also stronger than I knew. And here is the unexpected gift of outliving everyone. You finally stop performing. There is no one left to impress, no role to maintain, just truth. And truth is lighter than pretending. If you are young and listening to me, don't wait until you are 80 to demand connection. Don't wait until the house is empty to realize you were lonely inside it all along. If you are older and listening, it is not too late to start speaking. You deserve to be known, not managed, not tolerated. Known. I used to think a good marriage meant no big problems. Now I know it means shared vulnerability. It means sitting across from each other and saying, this is what scares me. It means asking, are we still meeting in the middle? I don't cry much anymore. At 102, tears feel heavy. But sometimes, when the evening light hits the wooden floors just right, I allow myself one small moment of mourning. Not for Thomas, for the conversations we never had. But I don't live in regret. Regret is useful only if it becomes wisdom. And here is my wisdom for you. If something feels off, pay attention. If you feel unseen, say it. If you crave depth, ask for it. The worst thing you can do is shrink yourself to preserve peace, because real peace never requires shrinking. This old house creaks at night. The wind moves through the trees, and sometimes I place my hand on the empty side of the bed and whisper, "We could have done better." Not with blame, with understanding. Life is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about noticing them before they become decades. 40 years is a long time to wait for connection. Don't make the same mistake I did. Speak, ask, risk, open, be known. One day, you will sit in a quiet room, just like I do now, and the only question that will matter is this: did I live honestly? I hope your answer is yes.